our politics, we find that the power blocks would prefer that we choose one side, and we cling to that one side. The idea that we should look at them and say, we don't understand your quarrels, or we don't want to be involved in your quarrels, this they find difficult to understand. They would rather we pick China and we say we want to be a satellite of China, or we pick the United States and be a satellite of the United States. Actually, if we did either of those, they would still be accused. Or we would still be accused of doing the wrong thing. At present, we are trying to do what we consider to be the right thing, and that is to say to the big powers, you have your own quarrels. Since you are big powers, the world will understand your quarrels. You know, but the world will not understand my challenging China or challenging the United States of America. The world will not understand. They will think I'm mad.
The National Educational Television Network presents, in its Changing World series, Tanzania, the Quiet Revolution.
Julius Nyerere is the founding father and first president of the East African Republic of Tanzania. A modest, patient man, there is a bond of mutual respect and affection between him and the people he leads. They call him Mwalimu, which means teacher in Swahili. Nyerere is an imaginative innovator, a quiet revolutionary, and a champion of the policy of non-alignment in relation to the Cold War. In severing diplomatic relations with Great Britain during the Rhodesian crisis, Nyerere neither altered his basic policy of non-alignment nor his strong economic ties with Britain and the West. It was simply his way of reasserting a long-standing commitment to the struggle for African self-rule throughout the continent. Nyerere believes in non-alignment as the only practical and moral means of getting help essential to his country's great war on poverty from everyone who offers it.
We want a railway. We speak to the Western countries, and they have the money. They have the two things required. They have the cash and the know-how. And the third thing, we have the historical connection with them. So we say we want this railway, they say it's no good. They expect us to stop there. Of course we don't. We talk to the Chinese. Then they discover we have spoken to the Chinese about this railway. And then we become bad boys immediately. Not because we want to try to build our railway, but we should stop. Since the Western world has said we can't help you to build this railway, we are expected to stop there. Why should we stop?
Tanzania, the biggest of the East African countries, lies south of the equator, bordering on the Indian Ocean and 8 neighboring countries. Its name speaks for the union of Tanganyika, about the size of Germany and France combined, and the tiny Zanzibar Islands. Most of the country's 10 million people and productive land are concentrated on the outer rim, the low-lying coastal plains, including the capital city of Dar es Salaam. The fertile highlands to the north, capped by Mount Kilimanjaro, and lakeshore areas to the west and south. The heart of the country, centered around Dodoma, is a vast and arid bush-covered savanna. In 1961, Tanganyika gained independence. Nyerere, as Prime Minister, took over the reins from the British, signaling the end of centuries of foreign control. The capital of this new country is Dar es Salaam. This modern, rapidly growing center of commerce, culture, and government had been a sleepy Arab port until the 1880s when the Germans took over. It was the headquarters of German colonial rule in Tanganyika until after World War I, when it came under British rule. But the cosmopolitan atmosphere of Dar es Salaam, flavored with history, is a thin facade. A few blocks back from the picturesque harbor, one plunges into the poverty which characterizes most of this city of 130,000 people and the rest of this big agricultural nation. Nyerere inherited a legacy of poverty from the colonial past which is enormous even in African terms. And it is this state of extreme poverty which intensifies all of Tanzania's current problems and casts a shadow of uncertainty across her future.
We are a young nation, less than 48 months old, and therefore we have our own particular problems, so that if we were a wealthy nation, a most highly educated people, a very healthy people, we would still have these problems of adjusting ourselves as a young people in East Africa, in the world, with all these big problems. But in addition to our youth as a nation, we have the problems of development, the problems of the health of our people, the education of our people, and the wealth of our people. These are huge problems, and frankly, these are the problems, the problems of development which we are facing.
To face these problems head-on, Tanzania has adopted an ambitious 5-year plan and long-range goals that Nyerere expects to reach by 1980. These goals call for more than doubling the annual per capita income from the present $55 to $120, for making Tanzania fully self-sufficient in trained manpower through a program of education, and for raising life expectancy from the present 40 years to 50 years. But the desire to lengthen the lifespan must be supported by greatly expanded and improved health facilities. At this rural hospital in Babati, a 28-year-old medical assistant is in charge.
The main difficult problem we're having is to have patients brought in time. Quite a number of patients are being brought too late when the disease is rather advanced. When a patient comes and represents complaints which points towards having sleeping sickness, we examine the blood slide. If we see the sleeping sickness organism in the blood slide, we usually do a lumbar puncture. We take out the CSF, the cerebrospinal fluid, examine it, trying to determine in which stage the patient is.
The wife of the medical assistant is the head nurse. The entire staff of 13 must treat 8,000 to 10,000 patients a year. Babati is a tsetse fly-infested area. One of this hospital's concerns is the detection and early treatment of sleeping sickness.
Last year, we did diagnose 22 sleeping sickness cases. And this year, we have diagnosed about 12 cases. We are trying to make people understanding the dangers of staying together with their domestic animals. Try to teach the people the general cleanliness standard, to make them wear clean clothes, eat balanced diet, take care of their baby properly.
These arid central plains account for about 1/3 of Tanzania's entire land area. On this savanna, one finds the most extreme poverty and the greatest resistance to change. The quality of life is biblical in its simplicity and severity. Famine and pestilence occur every 4 to 6 years. When there is drought, these shallow wells dry up entirely. The people who live here raise cattle and some maize, sorghum, and millet. To inspire change and solve the problems of poverty, Nyerere has been experimenting with social and political reforms. Tanzania, like many other African countries, has adopted a modified form of socialism.
I think most African countries are going to adopt one form of socialism or another. In particular, the African countries will find that unlike the old Western countries, their governments will have to do more and more directly with the economy, the development of the economy of their countries, than the United States needed to do, than Canada need to do, than most of the more developed countries of Europe and North America need to do. It will be found that the African governments must do the things which are usually associated with the socialist governments. That is one. The other one which the African countries I think will find they must do, which the socialist countries or the communist countries have not done, is that the African countries will say quite blatantly that they will make use or they will provide room in their development to private investment.
Private capital is invested in Tanzania's big plantations. Although they occupy less than 1% of the land, they nevertheless account for over 40% of the country's exports. They are owned primarily by Europeans. Here at the foot of Mount Kilimanjaro, where some of the best coffee in the world is grown, J.E. Lund, a Dane, manages the Swiss-owned Kibo estate.
Well, to begin with, we pump into the local economy in the form of wages to local people working for us, something in the region of 25,000 pounds a year, which goes entirely into the local economy. In addition to which, central government, various forms of taxes and cesses and export levies and direct company tax cash in another 50,000 pounds a year, roughly. If this was split up into small units, there would be nothing like it at all.
This is sisal, a cactus which thrives in dry soil. It is Tanzania's biggest export. Here at the Anglo-Swiss-owned Amboni estates, husky field workers chop off the tough spears, which are then bundled and moved off to a central plant. After a process of squeezing and drying, the end product is a strong fiber, which is the raw material used in making baling twine and rope. Almost all sisal is grown on foreign-owned plantations, but the government is using incentives and some pressure in persuading estate owners to assist in the establishment of settlements where sisal will be grown by Africans. Amboni Estates provides an outstanding example by lending funds, staff, and equipment for a pioneer community of this kind. Here at Kubuku, a new settlement is taking root. After the bush is cleared, settlers build houses for themselves, starting with the frame of small posts. Families from unproductive and overpopulated areas have volunteered to come here and start new cooperative communities. On completion, there will be 250 families at Kabuku living in 4 villages. Each family has a 25-acre plot on which to grow sisal and raise some maize and other food crops. Nyerere is banking heavily on settlements like Kabuku to transform the lives of Tanzania's poverty-ridden farmers. It is a bold and expensive experiment, which will be a major test of the success or failure of his regime. By 1980, the government plans to have 1 million people living on some 60 settlement schemes like Kabuku. At present, the problems immediately ahead loom larger than the prospects for success. During their first year, with no crops to be harvested, families receive their entire food supply in monthly rations from the United Nations World Health Organization. The corn meal was donated by the United States. Water, which is in very short supply in this part of the country, must be brought in daily by truck. School is taught by one of the settlers in Swahili, which is now the common tongue in Tanzania. been no shortage of families volunteering for this pioneer life in unfamiliar surroundings. They have been arriving with a high proportion of children and great hopes for a better life for a new generation. In addition to assistance, the government provides Kabuku with the best advice it can muster. G.P. Alsbrook, the Commissioner of Village Settlements, comes from Dar es Salaam every month or so to provide at a meeting with regional experts, the Ambonia states, and the Kabuku staff. The Kabuku manager brings up the always present water problem.
The water is going to be not enough within a short time. At present, we are getting them 1,600 gallons a day.
1,600 gallons for 600 people. That's about that. Yes, it's about 2.5 gallons, which is certainly not very extravagant.
No.
There's no excess water, no water being wasted on that trip.
It doesn't meet the minimum requirements, I think, of the health boards.
I shouldn't think so.
And of course, this I'm counting on the farmers, but we have got staff.
Yes.
We're also getting some.
They're all
from
using from that as well. Well, I think that's very, very modest indeed. I don't think one would ask anybody to cut down on that. Yes.
So some of the farmers go there and they draw the water by themselves.
It's the water, right?
Yes. There's some water, but we have just cleaned it.
Yes.
It's being used.
Water development and irrigation department can do quite a lot, but it can't supply rain.
Good.
Nick Jargolis is a housing expert, born in Tanganyika and trained at Syracuse University. He's disturbed about the kinds of homes the settlers are building.
I'm not suggesting here that the permanent structure, which is the most desirable thing to have for a family, should be built straight away. But I went around village number 1, and the last time I was here, and the thing that struck me very, very much was when I came here, you remember, I was very pessimistic about the traditional type of housing which had been put up by the National Service. You remember I spoke about it, and I said that these things won't last, and they'll tear down, and people will be spending their time maintaining them. Well, I was almost sadistically pleased, with a gleam in my eye when I found that this thing indeed had happened. Some people had been doing some patchwork, other houses were deteriorating, and I asked some of the people, some of the Chaga people, and I did not get the impression, but this is purely just a few questions, that they were pleased with the situation.
Settlement life is continuous hard work. The Kabuku manager has the job of getting rid of a settler who isn't playing his part.
They don't dislike him just because he's not of their own origin or what, but because of his actions. He's naturally lazy.
Well, on different schemes, they have formed these sort of village development committees, and they have had their powers of, very illegal powers, of fining so much the first day's absence and so much the second day's absence and so on, and leading to expulsion. And I think fines have been collected, again, quite illegally on some of these schemes. But I think the thing at the moment is to get these bylaws. I'll go and find out from Mr. Mbewa about these bylaws, and people have got to be members of these cooperatives and have got to abide by the regulations or suffer the consequences of failure to do so. No. But I think in a case like this man, now that you have referred him to the Regional Development Committee, you can't suddenly decide you don't want the Regional Committee to adjudicate. The Regional Committee has now appointed the subcommittee. Let the subcommittee investigate. And if they find, after discussing with the other settlers, that this man is really unsuitable, not pulling his weight at all, and they say, yes, let him go, off we send him back to Pangani with a warrant at his or our expense. Get rid of him.
I will bring it up for you tomorrow.
Any other matters you'd like to raise?
United States Peace Corps volunteers have also been working at Kabuku. Tom Robertson is a University of Michigan-trained landscape architect.
I did layout plans for the villages, and I went in with the African surveyors, and we laid out the roads and located the houses on the ground. And then 200 national servicemen came in and helped us build local-type houses out of grass roofs and mud walls for the settlers to arrive last February. Things are getting done, but there's a lot of things. They go, you know, kidogo, rather slowly at times. I'm always one that likes to jump right in the middle of things and punch them out, so you get them done in a hurry. But you've got to go slowly. And I think for most of us working over here, the biggest thing is to slow down and settle back and watch things go along and help where you can, but don't push too hard.
To Nyerere, the present heavy reliance on foreign manpower is a stopgap measure. Self-sufficiency in technical and managerial skills is the very essence of a country's power to develop.
We don't have the manpower. The manpower we are using at present is borrowed manpower. We borrow from all over the world, both the money and the men. And the real problem of our country is really the manpower. And we're trying to tackle this in our 5-year development plan. But you don't train a person, you know, within 12 months. It takes a long time.
Education is Nyerere's answer to the manpower problem. The new modern University College campus, perched on the hills overlooking Dar es Salaam, is a symbol of the paramount importance given to education in Tanzania. As Chancellor, Nyerere took part with the university's international faculty in granting degrees to this first graduating class, dressed in bright orange robes. Each student was assigned to a course of study according to the manpower needs and is required to work for the government after graduation. In order to provide the country with as many trained adults as quickly as possible, Tanzania gives priorities to higher education and secondary schools. All university, adult education, and secondary school students have scholarships, while some tuition is paid on the primary school level. Machame Girls Secondary School is considered to be one of the best in the country. At the assembly, the head mistress, Miss Kasinde, welcomes students at the start of a new term.
Now, the first thing that I'd like to tell you today about is our new teacher who has come. Her name is Bridget Madsen, Miss Madsen, and she's from Denmark. That's our new teacher. Okay, now remember again the same old story. Responsibility, cleanliness, and study. All right, now study hard and go to your classroom. Thank you.
Over half the faculty at Machame are foreigners. This is a situation that one would find at most of the country's secondary schools because of the shortage of trained teachers. Sue Curry is one of about 300 Americans teaching in Tanzania. She is giving a course in African history.
You all, may I say one thing? The essays you wrote at the end of last term, on the whole, they were good, except you all gave me a really very confused amount of facts that were not organized in any one thing. You get very worried about the wording of questions. What are the 3 things we're talking about? And it's a comparison essay. What are the 3 things? Okay. Now, what is the problem? You didn't know what was meant by political, economic, and social. And if you don't understand, what do? You can look in the dictionary. Don't be frightened of the dictionary. You can't even. Okay, that's enough for those essays. But I'm going to continue to give you the hard kind rather than the easy kind.
The class moves on to a discussion of current developments in South Africa.
How would you describe the government of South Africa today? Are the Africans in South Africa ruling themselves at present? No, they are not. Much shorter answer.
ruling themselves.
Who is ruling them, Dorcas?
The Afrikaners.
The Afrikaans people. What is our great accusation? What can we accuse the Republic of South Africa's government as doing, James?
The population of the Africans in South Africa is more than those of the white people. But the government is run mostly, almost completely by the white people.
What about the vote for the Africans? Were the Africans given the vote?
I don't think that the Africans are not given the right to vote.